I'm Keona. I'm 30 years old, and I stay at home taking care of the house. My husband, Aoki, is 6 years older than me, and we've been living with his parents for 2 years. Aoki's parents, Robert and Barbara, are both in their 60s, and they're healthy and full of energy. Barbara, Aoki's mom, really likes going out and having fun. Since I moved in, I've noticed she hardly ever does any chores around the house. Even though she doesn't work outside the home, she doesn't do much inside either. She used to be a stay-at-home mom, but now she leaves most of the housework to me. Sometimes she'll tell me to go have fun while she stays home, but then she'll complain if things aren't done when she comes back. I've been dealing with this situation, trying my best to not get too frustrated. Whenever I try to explain to my mother-in-law that I might not finish everything before she leaves, she brushes it off. She says it's normal to do a lot of chores and criticizes my generation for not being able to handle it, wishing I could be more like Aoki. It's not just the remarks that bother me. Barbara constantly praises Aoki, especially because he works for a big company, which she's really proud of. She often says things like, "Aoki works so hard, but his wife isn't doing well." It's like her favorite phrase, and Aoki doesn't defend me. During dinner, Barbara starts complaining about me, and Aoki just responds with a simple, "Oh really?" showing little interest. When I first met Aoki, I thought he was mature because he was older, but things have changed. It feels like he sees me only as a maid. Even when I'm working late into the night, he doesn't say anything to me. Instead, he tosses laundry at me, aiming for my face, and says, "Here, do this too." I regret marrying someone like him. Since we got married, he's changed a lot. On our first anniversary, he bought a cake but then threw a pie in my face and laughed. You wouldn't think he's a grown man. But there's one bright spot in my life, and that's my father-in-law, Robert. He's really calm and always asks if I need help with anything. He's the only one who treats me kindly in this house. Since I quit my job when I got married, he's the only person I can really talk to. I've grown to love Robert like a real father. But Robert works during the day, so he's not home much. That means I'm often alone with Barbara. When I talk to Robert, Barbara doesn't say anything, but I can tell she doesn't like it, and her attitude towards me has gotten worse. She started accusing me of making eyes at my father-in-law just because Aoki ignores me. She'd say these things when Robert couldn't hear. I tried to defend myself, saying it wasn't true, but she just brushed it off. Did I touch a nerve? She'd say, acting like I was overreacting. No matter what I said, she always had a snarky comeback. Our talks never really connected. I talked to Aoki about it, hoping he'd understand it was just Barbara's imagination. But he just laughed it off. "So now you're into older men too," he joked. It was clear nothing would change. I didn't expect him to help with chores or stop Barbara's teasing, but I never thought he'd say something like that. It was a big shock. I started feeling like I didn't belong in that house. One summer day, Barbara mentioned planning a family trip for Aoki's summer break. At first, I thought it was just her usual desire to go out, but then she surprised me by asking if I wanted to come along. I didn't expect to be invited. I thought they would go without me. When I hesitated, Barbara seemed suspicious and asked if I didn't want to go. I felt uneasy about her sudden invitation. What did she want by including me? I was unsure, but I didn't know how she would react if I said no. That night, Aoki asked me again if I was going on the trip. I replied that I was invited. His response was unexpected. He burst out laughing for some reason. "What's so funny?" I asked, feeling uneasy. Aoki just brushed it off, saying it was nothing. On the day of the trip, we set off with Aoki driving. Robert couldn't join us right away due to work, so it was just the three of us in the car. Aoki driving, Barbara in the passenger seat, and me in the back. I couldn't see their faces clearly, which made me even more anxious. Barbara suddenly asked if I had withdrawn some money for the trip. I confirmed that I had taken out a few $100s. She seemed pleased at this, which struck me as odd. After driving for a while, I noticed we had passed the inn we were supposed to stay at. "Did we just pass the inn?" I asked. Aoki replied vaguely, saying there was a tourist spot ahead and we'd check in after seeing it. His smile seemed forced, and I sensed something strange was going on. As we drove away from the inn, the scenery outside turned greener. I let out a quiet sigh, making sure neither Barbara nor Aoki heard me. Eventually, we arrived at a dam. It wasn't very big, and there weren't many people around. Let's get out and stretch our legs, Barbara suggested eagerly. And make sure not to leave anything valuable in the car, Aoki added. I followed their instructions, stepping out of the car. But I noticed Barbara and Aoki hesitating, pretending to be busy inside the car. Once I stepped out and closed the door, I heard the car lock click. Aoki had only left the windows slightly open. Then he burst into laughter. What's going on? Are we staying here for the night? I felt anger bubbling up towards Barbara, but I kept it in check. What do you mean? I asked, trying to keep my cool. You walked right into that one, didn't you? My husband was laughing so hard he was clutching his stomach. My wallet and cell phone were still in the car. Everything had gone according to Barbara and my husband's plan. Have fun out here, Keona, Barbara sneered. Maybe you can eat some grass and sleep under the stars. My husband, holding my wallet and going through it, closed the window. His laughter died down, and then they drove off, leaving me alone. Well, they're a handful, and it's hot, I muttered to myself. Even though it was scorching hot and I was at risk of dehydration, I surprisingly didn't panic. An hour later. Why are you here? My husband was stunned to see me in the lobby of the inn where we were supposed to stay. Are you a ghost? Did something happen at the dam? He asked, looking bewildered. Barbara looked like she was about to pass out. I considered teasing them by pretending to be a ghost but decided against it. I'm not a ghost and I'm staying here tonight, I told them, showing them the key to my room. I had already left my luggage there. My husband couldn't grasp the situation and started to get agitated. He thought I had taken the key to their room without permission. What are you doing? Give it back, he demanded, trying to grab the key from me roughly. Just then, a man appeared and grabbed my husband's hand. Sir, please refrain from causing a disturbance here, the man said firmly. He was about the same age as Robert, but he had a strong build and was taller, making him seem more dependable than my middle-aged, slightly overweight husband. Who are you? Are you staff here? You can't just interfere with a guest like this. I'll sue you for assault. Barbara yelled at the man who had intervened. I apologize for not introducing myself earlier. I am the owner of this inn, the man replied calmly. Hearing this, my husband quickly let go of my hand. I recognized the owner. Back when I was in college, I had visited this area with my friends during summer vacation. It was scorching hot that day, and we got lost on our way to our accommodation. Eventually, we stumbled upon a girl collapsed on the side of the road. That girl was Mary, the owner's daughter. We called an ambulance and stayed with her until help arrived. The next day, the owner visited us at the inn where we were staying and thanked us profusely. He said, "You saved my daughter's life. Thank you so much." He also offered, "We own this inn too, so next time you're in the area, please stay with us. You won't have to pay." Since then, my family and I have visited the inn several times, so I knew the owner well. As he reprimanded my husband and Barbara, he remained polite, but I could sense his underlying anger. In fact, both the owner and I were aware of Barbara and my husband's scheme from the beginning. I had caught wind of their plan 2 weeks ago. Feeling suspicious about their sudden invitation for a trip, I decided to set up a voice recorder in the living room. I targeted times when my husband and Barbara were alone, like when I was taking a bath or doing laundry, and their plan came to light. I know, let's ditch Keona somewhere. It would be hilarious. How about here? There's a gym about an hour's drive from the inn. When I heard their conversation, I was shocked. I immediately called the inn and told the owner everything about the situation I was in and what they were planning. The owner was furious. He himself had once experienced his daughter collapsing in the heat, so he was even more upset. Knowing the situation beforehand, the owner arranged for my pickup today. After my husband and Barbara's car left, he had me ride in the inn show. By the way, the driver turned out to be Mary from that incident years ago. I got my license. Let's go for a drive, she said excitedly. Right now? I asked, surprised. Oh, that's great, I replied. We chatted happily, bought some local specialty ice cream on the way, and arrived at the inn. Even though I knew about the plan and that a pickup was coming, I was still worried for Mary. But she knew the area like the back of her hand. So we arrived at the inn several tens of minutes earlier than my husband and Barbara. You mentioned suing earlier, ma'am, the owner said, looking at Barbara sternly. Yes, I did. It's outrageous to be accused of the opposite, Barbara retorted. I'm sorry, but you're not our guests, the owner replied firmly. What? Don't mess with us. My husband and Barbara both lost their temper. Your and your mother's reservations have been canceled, the owner stated plainly. I added you. Who do you think you are? My husband was on the verge of losing his temper again, but the owner restrained him. Keona did nothing wrong. We, the inn, canceled your reservations, the owner explained calmly. What do you mean? My husband demanded. If you leave a woman alone at a dam in the mountains after stealing her wallet, wouldn't you be committing a crime? We can't allow such people to stay at our inn. We also called the police. My husband and mother-in-law became even more furious at this revelation. This is no joke. Don't think you can get away with this. I work at our company, my husband protested. This little inn in the mountains. Just then, Robert arrived. Hey, what's going on here? Sensing the tension, Robert looked around and asked for an explanation. Barbara and my husband appealed to Robert, saying the inn staff were rude and they wanted to stay elsewhere. But when Robert heard what had happened, he was furious. You idiots. It was the first time I had seen Robert yell. How embarrassing. I can't believe we're from the same family. You two, get out of here now. My husband and mother-in-law were stunned by Robert's outburst. Where to? Another inn, they asked. But Robert was firm. Wait a minute, that's not possible, Dad, my husband said with a wry smile. But Robert was resolute. You're disowned. Get out. No, don't make me say it again. He pushed my husband away. Then the police arrived and my husband and Barbara turned pale. The owner and I explained the situation to the officer, and I played back the recorded conversation. My husband and Barbara started crying. But Robert intervened. Quiet down. You're disturbing the inn. Officer, please take them away. It's not like that, officer. We didn't think it would be such a big deal. It was just a prank. My husband tried to explain, but the officer's expression changed. A prank? Are you serious? Don't you realize that your little joke could have put someone's life at risk, especially your own wife's? They were scolded harshly. Though they weren't arrested due to it being a family matter, Barbara and my husband looked pale throughout the ordeal. This isn't over. Keona's feelings will determine your future. Understand. With those final words, my husband and Barbara, still pale, went home. Robert seemed apologetic the entire time. He kept saying, I'm really, really sorry. I can't apologize enough for not noticing the unpleasant experiences you have been having, for the terrible ordeal you went through today. He also deeply apologized to the inn owner, expressing remorse for the trouble they caused. Interestingly, the inn owner is a businessman who runs several other companies and is also a client of the company where Robert works. Without knowing this, my husband had boasted, I work for a big company. I'm relieved I was able to hold my husband and Barbara accountable. But it's also frightening to think what could have happened if I hadn't known about their plan beforehand. I hope being scolded by the police makes them realize the seriousness of their actions. After returning from the inn, I decided to divorce my husband. Naturally, I demanded a significant alimony. I hope they learn from this experience and refrain from hurting anyone else in the future. It's quite a turn of events. Robert and Barbara ended up divorcing as well. Robert severed ties with my ex-husband and kicked him out of the house. Due to the incident, my ex-husband was advised to resign from his job. It turns out his workplace behavior had been problematic for a while. Just as he treated me poorly, he had been harsh to his colleagues and juniors, and the HR department was already considering taking action against him. Reflecting on my own actions, I'm disappointed that I mirrored such behavior. My ex-husband, now unemployed, is struggling to find another job. Despite his age, he lacks a solid track record for managerial positions from his previous company, and he struggles to explain why he left. Barbara was also kicked out by Robert and has sought refuge with relatives at her parents' home. However, there are concerns about her spending habits and love for travel. Her relatives fear she might drain their savings if she moves in with them. It might be wise for her to consider finding a part-time job, especially since she's still in good health. So I moved out of my in-laws' house and now live nearby by myself. I'm still friends with Robert, and sometimes I ask him for advice about work issues. Before this, I used to take care of the house and kids, but now I'm starting a new chapter in my life. When I was looking for a job, the owner of a company approached me and asked if I'd like to work for them. He was really concerned about how things were going for me. It seemed like he wanted to find a job for me in his company. I happily agreed to join. I felt really thankful for his kindness. I expressed my gratitude, but he insisted that they were the ones who should be grateful. It felt like I had already returned the favor from before, and now I needed to give something back. The company he recommended me to is well known and treats its employees well. It was a pleasant surprise. Interestingly, it's in the same industry that my ex-husband used to brag about, but this company is much bigger. Everyone there is friendly, and I'm enjoying my days much more now than when I was dealing with marital problems.